It's 1600 hours sharp Bulgarian time, and I believe that we should be strict. Dear speakers, participants, partners, and friends, first of all, I would like to greet you on the new year and wish you all, under the circumstances around the world, to be and to stay healthy in the first place and to get ready to meet the new challenges we are faced with. And one of those challenges is indeed 5G. And I believe that our today's discussion is crucial as we are going to touch the topic through the prism of Euro-Atlantic partnership. I would like to thank all the participants who have joined in. So far, 170 participants have registered in and are going to follow live the event. There is an immense interest. A lot of questions have already been posed. Today, we shall have the honor to hear the insights of our distinguished panel of speakers from both sides of the Atlantic. Each of them is going to touch upon different aspects of the transatlantic 5G agenda. We have with us today Mr. Rosen Zhelaskov, Minister of Transport, Information Technology and Communications of the Republic of Bulgaria, Major General Robert E. Wheeler, former DoD Deputy Chief Information Officer for C4 and Information Infrastructure Capabilities, Jan Brzezinski, Resident Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security in Washington, D.C., Nick Kazvini-Gore, Legislative Assistant in the Office of Marcy Kaptur, was supposed to be with us, but due to the recent developments on the Capitol Hill, he is not in a position to join us. However, Jan Brzezinski actually will take over his topic related to the recent legislation adopted by the US Congress, which will facilitate the EU-US cooperation in this regard. And last but not least, we shall have Mr. Krum Garkov, Executive Director of EU LISA, the European Agency for Operational Management of Large-Scale IT Systems in the area of freedom, security, and justice. I believe that with such a distinguished panel of speakers, we shall indeed focus the attention of participants on our topic. Europe is one of the most developed regions in the world when it comes to commercial launch of 5G services, with an investment amounting to 1 billion euro, including 300 million in EU funding. And over the past 2 years, Europe has come increasingly to realize the necessity to take advantage of the full potential of 5G, which will no doubt enter every sphere of life of European citizens. Hence, the European Union has to ensure a high level of security and resilience of the networks. Only thus could it protect the interests of its citizens and its interests, including on the international political and economic stage. In January 2020, the member states have adopted the EU toolbox on 5G, which is indicative for the commitment of the European Union in this regard. In the conclusions, the member states have agreed to strengthen security requirements, assess the risk profiles of suppliers, to apply relevant restrictions for suppliers considered to be high risk, including the necessary exclusions pertaining to key assets considered to be critical as well as sensitive, such as the core network functions, and last but not least, to put strategies in place to ensure the diversification of vendors. it wouldn't be an overstatement to say that this is in full line with the expectations and understanding of the United States as a strategic partner of Europe, which is highly concerned about the vulnerabilities of communication, which is carried out through 5G infrastructure built on Chinese technology. Albeit not mentioning explicitly the Asian states in order to avoid trade war, the European Union has clearly structured its approach, taking into account the concerns of its transatlantic partner. At the same time, the US has launched its Clean Network initiative at the beginning of 2020, which is aimed at preventing and countering the long-term threats coming from authoritarian malign players such as the Chinese Communist Party. By the end of 2020, more than 12 EU member states have joined the initiative, including Bulgaria. At the backdrop of all said, we could clearly state that the transatlantic partners are all on the same page regarding the 5G security. Is that assertion, however, fully valid, and what is up next? This is the question that I would like to address with our first speaker, Mr. Rosen Zhelaskov, Minister of Transport, IT and Sea of the Republic of Bulgaria, who will elaborate on the European approach for strengthening digital sovereignty in 5G with like-minded partners. Minister Zhelaskov has vast experience in telecommunications and e-governance, including his capacity as chairperson of the e-governance state agency and chairman of the Communications Regulatory Committee. As of 2018, he has assumed the office of Minister of Transport. Minister, floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Tsvetanov. Thank you all for joining in. I would like to wish you a very healthy and successful new year. We are living at a time when data is underpinning everything, and we are surrounded by devices transmitting the data, by networks, and an overall environment where artificial intelligence will prevail. And under such circumstances, it seems that human intelligence is not capable of processing this entire flow of information and data overwhelming us on a daily basis. And in this sense, the Euro-Atlantic partnership and cooperation is crucial. Talking about 5G, it's not only about technology, because 5G is not the newer and improved, updated version of 4G. 5G provides an opportunities which previously have not been provided and ensured before. We are talking here about a lot of questions that we have no answers to. This is a very new topic, and of course, its security aspect is very important. This is the reason why I accepted the invitation to take part in this forum, because I am fully aware of the importance of ensuring resilience and security of 5G. We all know that the strategic partnership between Bulgaria and the United States encompasses a broad spectrum of matters, ensuring cyber resilience and security of the 5G mobile networks is one such matter of mutual strategic importance, on which in October last year, a joint Bulgaria-US statement of cooperation was signed. Bulgaria's national policy in the area of 5G reflects the European Union's efforts to establish a coordinated approach towards cybersecurity of the new generation networks. This approach was put forward in extenso in the EU toolbox of risk mitigation measures. The steps taken at national level to ensure safe transition to 5G networks are part of a joint EU approach driven by the shared understanding that security anchored in the security by design principle should be a key guideline in the efforts to ensuring cybersecurity of all new digital networks, including 5G. In Bulgaria, a wide range of national institutions have committed to safe and secure deployment of 5G networks in Bulgaria, guided by the understanding that building secure next generation mobile networks and cybersecurity in general is a major prerogative and necessity for our citizens and economies, contributing to global prosperity in a reality highly dependent on the digital. In December 2020, the European cybersecurity strategy was launched. The strategy, while outlining a number of cybersecurity policy aspects, lays a strong emphasis on ensuring high levels of cybersecurity for the Internet of Things, as more than 25 billion devices are expected to be connected by 2025, which means that the market for connected devices will open up a possibility for exploiting uncovered risks, given all expert known vulnerabilities of using this type of devices, related also to the lack of sufficient cyber culture amongst users. Europe has the needed resources to be a leader in cybersecurity. On this premise, I see a serious potential in the European Commission's proposal to launch a project on connecting live security operations centers across member states in a common network. Building EU-wide cyber shield will help both detect and respond to cyber attacks, as well as strengthen EU digital sovereignty. Using digital technologies and networks during the COVID crisis clearly revealed that the process of digital transformation has reached a level where cybersecurity is an overarching principle. Hence, effort now should be focused on providing new tools for its implementation. As part of the European Union, together with other member states, we view the security aspects of 5G networks through the prism of technological sovereignty while remaining true to the EU rules and values. Pursuant to the requirements of the European Electronic Communications Code, the Bulgarian National Assembly is considering legislative amendments strengthening the national regulators' powers in determining security requirements for electronic communications networks. In this context, the Communications Regulatory Commission has decided to set up 2 advisory councils involving various institutions, including the Ministry of Transport and other stakeholders, to inform on matters related to the security of public electronic networks and services with a view to crafting rules on the minimum security requirements to public ECNS and developing security risk management methods. As essential elements to secure 5G would be an essential element would be the introduction of a certification scheme for network components and processes of equipment suppliers, an idea which last December was supported by members of the NIS Cooperation Group under the European Commission. In its progress report on the EU 5G toolbox implementation of December 2020, the European Commission recommends that member states take relevant steps towards implementation of the coordinated risk-based approach, notably with regard to measures aimed to mitigate the risk of using untrusted supplies in network deployment. The EU toolbox and the EU coordinated risk assessment provide guidance on the objective criteria that can be employed in assessing the risk profile of suppliers of critical and sensitive network components. The experience of our EU-US partners with criteria applied in this process and the exchange of best practices on relevant legal and technical aspects would be extremely helpful in our joint endeavors. Concerted effort and close cooperation with our strategic partners and like-minded countries, including the United States, are fundamental to ensuring 5G security and strengthening technological sovereignty. Thank you for your attention. I thank you, Minister Zhilyaskov. I believe that what Minister has just said shows clearly the steps undertaken so far by the EU member states based on the coordinated approach. But what is very important is the cooperation, the joint cooperation statement with the US signed next year. Another important aspect are the measures taken by the national regulator and standardization. Now I would like to pass the floor to our next speaker, Major General Robert E. Wheeler, former DoD Deputy Chief Information Officer for C4 and Information Infrastructure Capabilities. General Wheeler has 32 years of experience in the U.S. Air Force, encompassing all aspects of combat flying operations, cybersecurity, electronic warfare, and nuclear operations, C2, C3, as well as international negotiations. He has served as Chief of Division for European Security Matters at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as a Senior Military Advisor to the U.S. mission of OSCE in Vienna, as well as Senior U.S. Military Representative to the NATO C4 board. He retired in 2016, but even today, Major General Wheeler continues serving his country by advising various DoD senior panels on issues of national importance. General Wheeler will elaborate on the intersection of secure 5G and NATO, as well as the importance of 5G security for the alliance. General, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Svetsnov. I really appreciate this today. Before I begin, I first off wanted to say Happy New Year to everybody on both sides of the Atlantic. And I'd like to wish truly everybody a healthy 2021. Given all the changes and things that are occurring across the world with COVID-19, I wish everybody the best in this particular endeavor and fight. So I'll move on here to a little bit of discussion today on secure 5G and what I think is really important in transatlantic security. So what we've seen in the past year is that COVID-19 has accelerated our understanding that the wired and wireless networks, and when I mean wireless networks, I'm focused on 5G, are critical infrastructure like gas and electricity, basically supporting what our last speaker talked about. You can think of 5G as becoming the critical infrastructure of machine learning, of augmented and artificial intelligence that will also allow big data to truly be something that comes to reality in this particular age. And what does that mean? That means solutions to problems that we have, like accelerated vaccines in the future, climate change, all the problems that our society faces. Things like 5G will become the critical infrastructure all that data will ride on. It's also going to be easy from a political perspective to see what a country's structure is by its 5G network. Authoritative regimes will have a 5G network that supports surveillance, control of its people. Democratic regimes are going to have 5G networks that support personal privacy, data, and digital sovereignty, a very important pillar on both sides of the Atlantic, the growth of new intellectual property, and the rule of law. you can clearly see there'll be two very different structures, which forces us to think through how we design those 5G networks from the beginning, as well as who we use for suppliers. 5G networks will become a giant wireless bubble, is the simplest way to put it, across the nation that will support literally billions of autonomous sensors that will change our way of life and be disruptive to some businesses where others will thrive and accelerate. Multiple studies predict that a functioning, secure, and I'll talk to more about that later, 5G network will support the next generation incubation of ideas that will produce a 1% to 3.5% gross domestic product bump, something that all of our countries could use post-COVID, truly. Interestingly, 2G, 3G, and 4G, they really supported communications, texting, data, and the consumer. 5G is really a transition point. 5G and beyond, meaning 6G and 7G, supports the government, militaries, big business, and true critical infrastructure through billions of near real-time sensors. If you think about this, because of this technology and the changes in use cases, it's going to require more security than present commercial standards. And I'll discuss this a little bit more, but we're talking about security on top of the 3GPP, the standards that are known in the commercial telco world. So there'll be a set of standards that go beyond that for NATO transatlantic security, for EU security, and for security in the US to support these use cases that go well beyond just the commercial implications. Hardware supply chain integrity, software supply chain integrity, and cybersecurity will be critical for a true 5G and beyond Western style network. O-RAN and vRAN, which is basically the virtualization of 5G networks, will allow faster network upgrades and minimal hardware infrastructure. If you think about it today, there is approximately 70% of a 5G network is hardware and 30% of it is software. O-RAN and vRAN, which is the virtualization of those networks, will actually flip that around to where it's 30% hardware and 70% software. And that's good for the West because the West is highly focused, and actually that is an area, a pillar of strength for us is in the software domain. So it'll become more and more important for the software aspects of it as vRAN and O-RAN, the virtualization of those networks, becomes more and more the approach that we'll take in the future. Governments are waking up to the criticality of secure 5G networks for every part of their country, from simple communications to data sovereignty, to emergency military command and control, to critical infrastructure, to autonomous vehicles, to robotic factories and hospitals, to virtual reality, to personal privacy. All of those particular use cases will be what be supported by 5G in the future. The West has an opportunity to lead these standards and to support democratic pillars and strong economic growths, which provide the underpinning for true national transatlantic security. Those are my points that I'd like to add in there, and I'm ready for questions, and I appreciate the opportunity here to make those comments. Over.
Thank you very much, General Wheeler. An extremely intriguing approach to presenting the topic of 5G, and I'm convinced that this will evoke interest with all our participants today, because indeed the coordinated approach of business and the governments should underpin the future developments. Our next speaker is Jan Brzezinski, senior researcher with the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security with the Atlantic Council. His experience encompasses various positions with the National Security Council, the Naval Institute, and other institutions. Today he will talk about the he will talk about the 3Cs initiative. Let me only mention that he is one of the great experts on the 3Cs initiative. We have been together at a forum dedicated to the 3Cs a couple of months ago, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank him for his support, given the fact that this year Bulgaria is taking over the presidency of the 3Cs initiative. Therefore, the digital as well as the gas and energy connectivity are all very important aspects of the 3Cs initiative, but especially the 5G security and resilience will provide a greater level of security of the initiative. Jan, you have the floor, but let me also say that we consider you indeed a great friend of Bulgaria. Many ambassadors to Washington, such as Elena Poptodorova, not to mention Mr. Solomon Passy, value highly your contributions. And I believe that this cooperation with various sectors of our society is indeed very important to move forward. You have the floor, Jan.
Well, thank you, Svetan, and thank you for those very generous remarks. And please pass my regards to the former ambassador and the former foreign minister. They are great friends, and they are great friends like you of the transatlantic relationship. If it's all right, I'll broaden my remarks, actually. I wanted to talk a little bit about how 5G could fit into NATO's agenda, into the agenda of the US-Bulgarian bilateral defense relationship, and then close with some points about 5G and 3Cs, something that you and I have worked on with quite a bit of energy and enthusiasm. You know, first, let me build on some of the points that General Wheeler made about 5G, but focus it on the battlefield. You know, both the previous speakers have emphasized how the rollout of 5G is going to profoundly revolutionize everything in our daily lives. It's going to facilitate faster downloads of movies and data. It's going to change what we do in our office. It's going to facilitate autonomous vehicles. It's going to affect how we relate to our refrigerators and things, Internet of Things, and the list goes on. It's a big game changer, particularly in the military domain, because of the lower network latency it brings and the massive acceleration of throughput speeds of data, which translates into massive real-time data sharing. 5G technologies also require significantly lower power consumption requirements. This shrinks the size and weight of electronic systems that will burden combat aircraft, warships, and individual troops. 5G is going to bring to the battlefield new ways to share and integrate sensor data between operators, weapons, platforms, including unmanned systems. It's going to enable forces to harness artificial intelligence and machine learning in ways never seen before on the battlefield. Think of autonomous loading and offloading of trucks, trains, planes, and ships. Think of enhanced situational awareness for soldiers in the foxhole to their most senior commanders at the headquarters, including national headquarters. Think of real-time targeting that's accelerated and retargeting. And think of whole new types of military concepts of operations, such as the swarming of drones. 5G on the battlefield is going to accelerate the kill chain, enable better battlefield medicine. It portends a revolution in military operations, one that will change everything from training to logistics to tactical, operational, strategic dimensions of warfare. And it's for this reason our military establishments need to be ahead of the game when it comes down to the incorporation of 5G into force structure. And this has to be an important mission for the NATO alliance. And it's for this reason that General Wheeler, along with former National Security Advisor and Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, Jim Jones, and I wrote an article last summer advocating that 5G integration and innovation become a priority of the alliance. We need interoperable 5G secured 5G technology, secure 5G technology to be embedded into NATO command structured and allied force structures. With all the opportunities presented by 5G, we can't ignore its challenges to the alliance. If 5G is left uncoordinated, allies risk deploying 5G technologies that could strip their forces of interoperability and render them vulnerable to penetration and compromised by our adversaries. So the alliance needs a 5G strategy to mitigate those challenges and risks, and to position allied forces on the technological high ground of the battlefields of today and tomorrow. The alliance needs to act now or risk being left in the 5G contrail of our adversaries. So toward that end, General Wheeler and I and General Jones have advocated that the NATO Secretary General convene soon a North Atlantic Council briefing on the military implications of 5G. This could be done in conjunction with their EU counterparts, the European Union ambassadors. The North Atlantic Council will task SACEUR to provide a military assessment of the risks and opportunities of 5G and define the requirements they generate for allied networks, platforms, weapons, and operations. We need to make 5G a priority focus of Allied command transformation and perhaps one of the NATO's centers of excellence, perhaps the NATO Cyber Center of Excellence in Estonia. We need to inject 5G experimentation into NATO exercises, particularly those that are hosted and orchestrated by ACT, but also by the Joint Forces Training Center in Poland and the Joint Warfare Center in Norway. The alliance has to play an important role in the development of technologies, operational concepts, and tactics that leverage the power of 5G. NATO forces need to benefit not only from secure and interoperable 5G links, but also be confident that they maintain a technological and tactical edge over their adversaries in this domain. The race for 5G dominance is underway, and the alliance cannot afford itself to fall behind. So what does this bring the United States and Bulgaria? First, let me commend Bulgaria for signing recently the 5G MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with the United States. It was signed last October. Now we need to think about how our two nations can operationalize that MOU into actual tangible collaboration. I would start with NATO. NATO needs a caucus of allies to drive forward 5G within the alliance and its structures. A caucus that would forward recommendations that we have I just mentioned, and incorporate 5G into alliance exercises and, when appropriate, NATO operations. Bulgaria and the United States could be leaders of such a NATO 5G caucus. Bulgaria also should consider how to incorporate 5G into its force structure, specifically its infrastructure, its bases. This year, the United States is going to be spending some $600 million creating a handful of 5G bubbles over some of its most important military bases in the continental United States. This is going to drive experimentation, the development of concepts and such. Bulgaria should consider a similar initiative, with one of its bases, perhaps one of those bases that host US military forces. That could be a real magnet for more US-Bulgarian engagement, because US forces want to deploy into force structure that is, they're able to best leverage the latest technologies. Now for 3Cs, let me close on 3Cs. Well, for those who don't know what 3Cs is, the 3Cs initiative was launched in 2016 to accelerate the development of cross-border energy, transport, and digital infrastructure. It consists of 12 European member states between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas, including Bulgaria. And 3Cs is not just a rhetorical talk shop. It's actually doing things. It stood up a 3Cs initiative investment fund. It's now operational, and it enters 2021 with $1.4 billion in capital commitments from the 3Cs countries, including Bulgaria, and including $300 million from the United States. And as Fetan noted, Sofia is in a leadership position in 3Cs this year, and will be hosting the 2021 3C Summit and Business Forum. The digital pillar of 3Cs could be the most transformational dimension of the initiative. And 5G will have a key role in this domain. Indeed, 5G permeates all three pillars of the 3Cs initiative. Its cutting-edge communication technology will be the backbone for national, regional, and global communications. That's the digital dimension. In the transport sector, you can imagine smart highways and railroads that are not only communication corridors, but leverage 5G for smart transportation, think autonomous transportation. And in the energy sector, you could see pipelines serving as 5G corridors, but 5G will be used to enhance the efficiency and security for nuclear, electric, and traditional power networks. There is huge bipartisan support for the 3 Cs initiative in Washington. Nick Kazvini-Gore, who works for Representative Marcy Kaptur, a Democrat in the House of Representatives, was going to be addressing us today. He couldn't make it because of the crisis we're experiencing on Capitol Hill following the tragic events of January 6th. In fact, I was on the phone with Nick when he was boarded up in Kaptur's offices, defending themselves against those who were attacking Capitol Hill. So he's not here for these reasons. But he would have talked today about 2 things. One, a resolution that his boss, Marcy Kaptur, a Democrat, and Adam Kinzinger, a Republican representative, had passed by Congress, by the House of Representatives late last year, that expressed bipartisan support for the 3 Cs initiative. It was passed almost by unanimous consent, reflecting the strong commitment Capitol Hill brings to this initiative. And moving forward, Representatives Kaptur and Kinzinger are introducing new legislation that they call the Transatlantic Telecommunications Security Act. Its intention is to add momentum to 5G technologies in the 3 Cs initiative. And if it passes, it will enable the United States Development Finance Corporation to make equity investments in 5G projects across the 3 Cs region. That could be a significant catalyst to help accelerate the development on a commercial basis of 5G technologies in the 3 Cs region in Central and Eastern Europe. This legislation was introduced last fall. It's going to be reintroduced shortly, and I actually think it has very good prospects of passage and promulgation into law. So these are the comments I wanted to make about 5G, what it means for our military domain, the imperatives it creates for NATO, the opportunities it creates for the US-Bulgarian security relationship, and the role it plays as a dynamic feature of the 3 Cs initiative. Thank you, Svetlana.
Thank you, Jan. You have laid a strong focus on the action taken by the US Congress in support of 5G development in the 3 C region. 3 Cs initiative has been strongly supported by the so far administration of President Trump, and some tend to believe that this support will be discontinued under the new administration. However, judging by what you have just said, we believe that the 3 Cs initiative will remain as a strong focus of the US foreign policy in the future as well. As you have mentioned, many countries have joined the investment fund and the initiative, and there is a sign that other countries from the Western Balkans would also like to join the initiative, but this is yet to be seen in the near future. In his statement, Minister Zhelaskov also underscored the commitment taken by the Bulgarian government vis-a-vis the future development of the cooperation with the United States in this particular regard. However, all this is part of the endeavors of the European Commission as well. And this is the point to extend my gratitude to Mr. Krum Gurkov, Executive Director of EU LISA, who has a long-standing experience in the area of communication security. He has held positions as Director manager of Experian Group. He has also served the National Revenue Agency of Bulgaria and has also served as managing director of Hewlett-Packard. I would like to explicitly thank Mr. Gurkov for having accepted my invitation to be part of this forum organized by the Euro-Atlantic Security Center. However, to me, it would be very interesting to hear from him what is the impact of 5G on the internal security of the Union, because no doubt from what Mr. Zhelyazkov has mentioned, what we need is a coordinated, concerted effort and a toolbox in place that should be adopted by all the EU member states. So floor is yours, Mr. Gurkov. Thank you, Mr. Tsvetanov. It's a pleasure to be part of this conference, and if you don't mind, I will proceed in Bulgarian language. Well, obviously he will speak in English, so I'll switch to Bulgarian.
Into particular context and to demonstrate how 5G technology affects internal security, especially in Europe. First of all, I would like to start saying that today and in the future, considering the effects of the migratory pressure and terrorist threats, Europe will be facing a dual challenge. At one hand, it will essentially want to remain open to the rest of the world, since the world has become smaller than before, and countries, businesses, organizations, and people are more interconnected and interdependent than ever before. And on the other hand, to stay secure. Still, since security and safety are one of the major concerns of the European citizens. And internal security is a crucial element of that response. But today, internal security is a challenge on its own. We need to recognize that internal security today goes through a very fundamental transformation, which has three main elements. First of all, it is information-driven. And information is the most valuable asset of internal security agencies. Second, its efficiency totally depends from digital technologies and access to an exchange of information. And last but not least, there is a very fast process of convergence between internal security, border management, and migration management. Actually, what we're facing today is a paradigm shift for internal security from being built on physical assets to being built on digital assets, and from silo-based approach to integration and information exchange. This trend has been recognized in Europe already for a period of time, and it is reflected into the new strategy for security union of EU, where one of the key building blocks is implementation of new integrated information architecture and a new ecosystem for internal security. And here comes the link between the transformation I'm talking about and 5G technology and security of the 5G. Internal security already today is information driven. Its strength depends on availability of comprehensive and timely information, enabling law enforcement officers to make informed and efficient decisions. And to achieve that, huge amount of data will have to be transmitted in real time back and forth. 5G, with its promise for ultra high speed of data transmission and ultra high reliability, could provide the infrastructure and the toolset to switch internal security from offline to online mode and from reactive to proactive real-time operations. At the same time, 5G technology has huge transformational potential. It could transform security operations, providing access to unprecedented levels of real-time information from any device, anytime and anywhere, especially for field workers, such as law enforcement officers and military personnel. And it could become a solid foundation for the new security ecosystem in Europe, enabling smart, hyper-connected law enforcement communities. 5G is also a force multiplier for implementation of other new disruptive technologies in the area of internal security, such as artificial intelligence and advanced real-time data analytics. It will enable the law enforcement officers to capture, relay, and analyze live data streams in real time, providing information for critical decisions. And last but not least, with this ability to transform visual experience and to provide multi-user experience, 5G technology will change substantially the way law enforcement officers are trained and operate, enabling multi-user training simulations with embedded virtual reality or augmented reality, and ability to remotely control number of different devices that could replace humans in dangerous or hostile environments. Well, however, we need to recognize also the fact that 5G is still in its early days. There is a small number of users that possess 5G-enabled devices yet, and 5G rollouts are being concentrated primarily in high-density urban locations. Hence, its deployment must be accelerated, and that's something that I have no doubt about. At the same time, if I draw the line, it's clear that 5G will play more and more important role as enabler and accelerator of the digital transformation of internal security in EU and globally. And at the same time, I would like to emphasize that the main challenges that implementation of 5G faces are not technical at all. And in particular, first and most important, which was mentioned also by the previous speakers, we need to look to achieve strategic autonomy. Whereas the battle over the 4G networks was essentially commercial, focusing on job creation and profits, the ongoing 5G debate is about geopolitics, technological leadership, and national security. Here in Europe and on both sides of the Atlantic, we must develop much stronger common approach to the new 5G technology to make itself less vulnerable to security risks and less dependent from third countries like China. At the same time, political leadership is very important, and the national and European leaders should recognize potential of 5G and must support and promote its accelerated rollout. Furthermore, speaking particularly for Europe, legislative framework needs to evolve in order to accelerate rather than to slow down a rollout of 5G networks. But at the same time, we need to recognize also that success of 5G deployment in EU and I believe globally, and full utilization of its transformational potential does not depend only from the amount of money spent or from the excellence of the technology. It depends mostly from the perceptions of the citizens for the balance between benefits and risks that the new technology brings. Today, we face still a number of conspiracy theories spreading around about 5G. Therefore, the governments and the EU as a whole should build trust and provide clear safeguards to the EU citizens that 5G technology will be used for legitimate purposes and will not bring negative health and safety effects. A new balance needs to be found between capabilities of 5G technology and data protection and privacy. And therefore, having adequate data protection safeguards, having strong and efficient cybersecurity and privacy by design are some of the key success factors for deployment and utilization of 5G, not only in EU, but also globally. And last but not least, deploying 5G and new digital technologies in the area of internal security and in any area of public service would not increase by itself its efficiency, as long as the technologies are agnostic to their use. It will be necessary to leverage new capabilities introduced by 5G and workforce to achieve better efficiency of day-to-day operations. Substantial capacity building efforts needs to be put in place by the governments to enable workforce transformation that will match the new capabilities and demands. Especially law enforcement officers needs to not only to learn how to use 5G digital tools, but also to create change-ready environment, able to enact the new business models and processes. And to conclude, the digital transformation of internal security and of public service as a whole will continue, and will continue at very high pace, mostly and partially accelerated by the present COVID crisis. The governments and border agents and security agencies will have to increase pace of utilization of digital technologies and 5G in particular. Their ability to see beyond technical developments and to recognize the challenges that I mentioned will be really crucial for their success in delivery of internal security services of the future and for utilization of the full potential of 5G technology as a whole. I will stop here, and I will be glad to address the questions of the audience if the time allows. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garkov, for the positions of your agency and EU in general that you have touched upon. We have more than 17, 18 questions addressed so far. Most of them are addressed to Mr. Garkov as well as Minister Zhelaskov, and I would like to come up with the first questions to Mr. Zhelaskov and Mr. Garkov. At the end of 2020, we witnessed an attack on the European Medicines Agency at a critical time for Europe when the approval of the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine was expected. During the same period of time, a similar problem was faced by the US government, which suffered one of the most serious cyber attacks in the last decade through embedded malicious code in software developed by SolarWinds company. We believe that Europe has the necessary resources to secure digital sovereignty in cybersecurity. And yet another question, which I believe is related to both Bulgaria and the single EU approach. What kind of recommendation would you make to countries in a situation like Bulgaria's, where Chinese equipment has already been purchased and deployed? Is there a way to use this kind of equipment while at the same time maintaining the level of trust and confidence by our transatlantic partners? And the question specifically to Mr. Garkov, do we need standardization standards of security in 5G, and who is supposed to put those in place? Let's answer these two questions, and then we shall proceed with questions to General Wheeler and Jan. Thank you, Mr. Tsvetanov. Mr. Garkov has mentioned something that I would like to further develop. You mentioned, Mr. Garkov, that the world is getting smaller, but I would also say that the population of the world at the same time is growing. So this is a kind of contradiction that we have to resolve. And within human communities, there is always a contradiction between empathy and hate. So, as you know, there is a long-standing debate how should we strike a balance between development and freedom. Of course, I believe that we should also always place freedom at the center, because this is a highest value which also underlies the behavior of each and every individual as part of our society. Obviously, there is a transformation from the silo approach to harmonization. The policy of the European Union is full harmonization of the alive European cyber centers where they already are in place as entities, as well as in countries where they are yet to establish, and they will be part of the so-called cyber shield. Mr. Tsvetanov mentioned at the outset the 300 million euro allocated for preventing coping with cyber crisis. Obviously, we have reached a level of digital transformation where security is in the center of our attention, and this has been reflected in the legislation and its development and update. Obviously, without cooperation between public sector and private entities, we cannot achieve the desired level of security. Hence, we have envisaged the necessary requirements to the business and private entities, as well as sanctions amounting to 10 million euro or up to 10% of the company's turnover. Those would be the sanctions that would not meet the 5G security requirements. So all this is put in place in order to achieve the desired level of cyber resilience. There will be control over the supply chain to control the equipment. Same goes for the networks already deployed. The approach here would be as follows. We do not see a necessity to transfer the entire administrative load on the telecoms and to change the components and networks gradually by such that have full trust and risk assessing goes for the diversification of the chain of supplies. Thank you, Mr. Gurkov. I would also like to begin with something already mentioned by Minister Zhelyaskov. Indeed, the trend from the silo to horizontal approach is evident for a simple reason. Let me first say that, yes, answering your question, that Europe has the potential to meet the challenges. However, at the same time, this cannot happen and cannot be achieved by a single company or even by a single country. Therefore, what we need is to focus on the horizontal action taken by both public and private agencies and entities, as well as the involvement of the entire society, because 5G security starts from the individual laptop or desktop going through the entire chain. So Estonia is a country which is a paragon in this regard, showing what kind of approach we should take to ensure 5G security. Building cyber knowledge and skills with the entire population is an essential prerequisite for achieving 5G security. The European Union has in place a very good strategy for 5G security. So I see that all the prerequisites are in place. What we need to do is prepare proactively in this regard instead of being reactive. As to standardization, of course we need standards. 5G is a new technology which is entirely different as compared to 3 or 4G. 5G is a predominantly software technology, and we all know the security aspect to software is of utmost importance. Therefore, we need concerted effort for certification of the equipment as well, because it will be very important for the equipment supplier to be able to show and to prove that they meet a certain set of standards, and that the networks built on that technology will be resilient, cyber resilient, and proof. Thank you. And I thank you. And now I would like to ask a question on behalf of General Sabisev to General Wheeler. Do you expect anytime soon to have a consolidated NATO position on building 5G allied communications and ensuring their security, given the fact that that will have a significant impact on the allied defense planning and modernization and on the deterrent and defense capability of the alliance? And a question to Jan Brzezinski. Because we mentioned that the 3C initiative is an open format, and that there is an eventuality that the that the 3Cs initiative could be open also to the Western Balkans. There is a question from Fatmir Medio from Albania. He would like to ask whether signing an agreement with the countries from the region on 5G would be one of the priorities of the US government under the new Biden administration. And a question which largely overlaps with the question of Mr. Fatmir Medio, former Prime Minister of Albania. A question from the Embassy of Hungary here to Sofia. Could we expect changes or rather continuity in the US Balkans and US Bulgaria relations under the Biden administration? A question posed by a counselor with the Hungarian embassy to Bulgaria. General Wheeler, you have the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will try to, given the time, I'll try to answer those pretty quickly. I think the biggest important piece is a set of standards for NATO and the US directly to that question that allow us to make sure that we're interoperable. What I'm seeing is what we're referring to as a group of spirals. And those spirals are a group of tests, a group of exercises that are occurring in the EUCOM, European Command, as well as NATO, that are testing various capabilities in the 5G realm. And when I say various capabilities, I'm talking about 5G in command centers. And those particular command centers are fixed locations where we're trying different security standards and different approaches to exactly what Mr. Brzezinski talked about, that edge processing, that ability to use the low latencies and the high speed to be able to process lots of data at the combat edge. Also seeing that same 5G technology being used on units on the move as part of these spirals. So in other words, people in the field, equipment such as tanks, which has been done in one country, as well as personnel, armored personnel vehicles, all of those being interconnected. And that will trigger a group of purchases as well as a group of standards that will go on, that will go further than the standards that we see in the 3GPP, which is the commercial standard. Presently, there are several in the US that are being tested that allow you to have, for example, top secret, NATO secret type information passed directly over 5G networks, which makes it critical for all of our nations to have the right kind of hardware and software in that particular area. So I see several different directions going. I think to Mr. Brzezinski's point, bringing this up in a NATO ministerial to solidify it at the strategic level, as well as at the troop level is really the key to the future. And I think that is in progress, but it could continue to use support in that particular arena. I also believe that individual countries within NATO have an opportunity to get involved with some of the United States tests that are going on in the US. And I think that's another opportunity. In Europe, I've seen some particular tests in Germany. I've seen some tests going on in Romania. There's a bigger test going on with Poland. And I think those are all positive, as well as the UK. And that's going to lead to a set of standards, as I've talked about, and to a NATO ministerial that actually focuses on 5G and the standards that you're asking. Back over, I'll leave the floor now to Ian. Over to you, Mr. Brzezinski.
Thanks, General Wheeler. I'm gonna just build on Wheel's point is 5G within the North Atlantic community, particularly in the military realm, is still a wide open field. As General Wheeler pointed out, the United States is driving ahead with this. So if you want to be close to the US military, you better get on the game on 5G, or you'll be left behind simply on the basis of interoperability. Second, there are not many people who are really pushing that aggressively within the alliance on 5G. There's the United States, there's Germany, Wheels knows it better than me, but maybe the UK. Then you've got Poland, and Latvia. Latvia has a 5G test center on the Gdazi military base. This is a big opportunity for Bulgaria to play a leadership role. It should take initiative and figure out how its force structure can be part of a driver within the alliance for innovation and security in 5G. It's an open field, it's wide open. It's something that's necessary, and it's an opportunity for Bulgaria. Regarding the questions, and I might add, we have a NACD, a NATO Defense Ministerial, coming up in mid-February. That would be an opportune time for the Minister of Defense of Bulgaria to say, hey, I want to play ball in this field within the alliance. Quickly on Biden and 3Cs. My sense is the Biden administration approaches the inauguration next Wednesday with a very positive view of 3Cs. We've worked closely with many of the Biden advisors. They're predisposed to 3Cs. They understand its rationale to complete a Europe whole and free. They're actually excited by its emphasis on leveraging private capital to accelerate the infrastructural integration of the region within itself and within a wider Europe. But ultimately, Biden administration support for 3Cs will be driven by the commitment of the 3Cs countries to this initiative. The United States is not going to lead, but they're going to support robustly if there's robust commitment from countries like Bulgaria, Poland, Estonia, Slovenia, and such to the initiative. So the ball is really in the 3Cs court when it comes to US support. With that said, I'm optimistic. Biden and 5G, probably turn back to General Wheeler on this, but my sense is they're going to continue the emphasis that the Trump administration has given to 5G. And maybe what they'll do is they'll be in a position to take these 5G MOUs, memorandums of understandings that have been signed across the North Atlantic area, and start operationalizing them. Biden team understands, in fact, this defense team gives great emphasis to the demands of technological change, technological innovation, and being in the lead when it comes down to bringing advanced technologies to their economies and to our battlefields. They'll continue that emphasis on security and innovation. And then 3Cs and the Western Balkans, I make the following points on that issue. One is that 3Cs is a Central European initiative. It is driven, largely funded and financed and led by the member states of the 3Cs, the Central European and East European countries. And they've decided that the 3Cs membership core is, as a defining feature, is membership in the European Union, because that is actually one of the kind of advantages and strengths of this initiative, that it brings to the investors' table the regulatory regime and consistency and reliability that EU membership brings. With that said, that does not preclude 3Cs cooperation and projects with non-3Cs members, particularly those that border 3C states. So for example, the 3Cs investment fund can invest in projects that involve a 3Cs country and a non-3Cs country. It just has to be a cross-border project involving at least one 3Cs member state. So that gives opportunity to countries like Albania to be engaged in the 3Cs initiative. And I would say that the relationship between the 3Cs countries and the other countries of Central Central and Eastern Europe has been an important priority for the initiative. The last 2 or 3 summits have emphasized the need to have a vision for 3Cs that go beyond its current 12 countries. And I think that's a positive thing and something that we need to build on. Thank you.
Hey, Ian, if there's I'll make one comment. This is Bob Wheeler again in there. The individuals that I've seen, to your point, within the Biden administration that have already been announced or are participating are all very positive on the Euro-Atlantic relationship, 5G in particular, and are experts in the 5G realm, and were in the Obama administration as well in many cases, and are basically continuing on with that focus on the technology area. So I frankly don't see any great changes in that particular arena between the 2 administrations. In fact, I almost would see a more focused approach on the 5G issue, especially when it relates to interoperability, the economy, and the growth of our economies in a post-COVID world. So I do believe that will not only not change, but actually accelerate, given the potentials that it has for it, and the fact that our economies are also a piece of our Euro-Atlantic security, and that will be a focus point. Back over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, because obviously we have exceeded the time frame initially announced for our forum. I believe that we should wind up by saying a few words in conclusion, and get back to the focus of each of your statements. So we have to ensure security, integrity, military security of the allied countries in NATO. I believe that it's extremely important to strike a balance between the countries involved from the EU, on the part of EU and the United States, to take action to protect the health and privacy of citizens, as well as the security of data. Indeed, the world is much smaller today with the introduction of 5G technology, and I believe that the standards that are going to be put in place and the toolbox that we already have adopted in the European Union is inseparably linked to the endeavors of the United States in this direction. Obviously, together we could be much stronger than acting separately. And I believe that Bulgaria should be a good example to the rest of the countries. I would like to thank you once more for being part of this webinar. I would like to thank all participants, and on their behalf express gratitude to all the panel speakers for having shared with us your thoughts and insights on the 5G through the lens of transatlantic cooperation. And I believe this will be helpful and useful for every government or institution involved in the 5G area. And thank you all. I wish you a good day and hope to meet again. Stay healthy, stay active, so that we could indeed be helpful for our citizens and our countries. Thank you again, and goodbye.